It's time for more Manifesting Original Rich Bitch Experiences. Each week, we're talking travel, wellness, and millennial musings with a level of refinement. What level? It fucking depends. I'm your host, Ava Bilkey. Welcome back to the More Pod. You know, one of my favorite things to do with friends when we get together is compare notes on media. The things that we are watching, listening to, reading, following to get new ideas and discover something new. And I love doing this because I find that when we get into our own little worlds and our own bubbles of what we consume on a regular basis, the shows we watch, the podcasts we listen to, it can often feel like since we watch and consume these things, we assume that everyone else must as well. Like everybody knows about it, it's not a secret. And while sometimes that can be the case with super popular media, I find that when I do go to compare notes, there's not much overlap. And I find that really interesting. I think this is one of the best ways to discover something new. And so for today, I thought it would be fun to go through my top picks, the media I'm consuming right now, the things that I'm loving, and hopefully you can find something new to consume as well. I consume a lot of media, and this has always been a very interesting relationship for me that I've observed. In a lot of ways, it's always been part of my job to know what's popular and know what's trending and really observe the patterns, the trends, the shifts in media at large. And I kind of love this for me. On the other hand, I've gone through phases where I'm unable to enjoy things like an average consumer because I'm constantly trying to reverse engineer it. It's like the marketer's lens wound, if you will. It's very hard to watch a TV show or listen to a podcast or follow an influencer on social media without thinking about how they made that video, what app they used to edit it, what kind of scripting was done on the intro of the clip, like the soundtrack in the background. Those are all the crazy places that a mind of a marketer will go when consuming media. And so, on one hand, again, I love this for me. On the other hand, I've struggled to purely enjoy consuming content. But over the last year, I definitely have gotten better at consuming things for the hell of it. So, the long story short is I've seen a lot of things, and I'm excited to recommend some of them to you. Before we get into the list, I wanted to share a couple of additional observations. First and foremost, when pulling together the list of the things I'm watching, listening to, reading, I had a hard time putting things into the proper categories. Is this a show or a podcast? Is this a book or a podcast? It seems like now more than ever, the lines are really blurred. I don't know if you experience this too, but it's like media in general. It's like, is this a show or is it just like a YouTube series? And that's pretty cool. I think it signals that there's just so much more opportunity to consume content, and consumers really get to pick how they digest it. But it was kind of hard to delineate what's a show, what's something I watch versus something I listen to. The second observation is that my list indicates that I'm very much in an entertainment era. There are a lot of reasons why you would consume media. You could be in an education phase where you are really looking to learn something and dig into a topic. And maybe you are watching documentaries or interviews, or you're reading nonfiction. You're trying to learn something. You're reading books that may have been assigned to you, like as a college assignment. Or you could be in a purely entertainment era where you're not so interested in doing the learning work and you're more interested in being entertained. You want to laugh, you want to transport to different realities, you want to just watch things that feel maybe inconsequential. I realized that I'm very much in an entertainment era. So if you are looking for something fun to consume, I've got you. There will be something on this list for you. Let's get into it. My top picks for what I'm watching, what I'm listening to, what I'm reading, and who I'm following. Let's start with things to watch. What's on the must-see list? First and foremost, you've got to see the movie Barbie. And if you're rolling your eyes because you're like, yeah, obvious, already seen it, I'm happy that you've seen it. As somebody who watches maybe 1 to 3 movies in the theater every year, I can say that when I walked out of that movie theater after seeing Barbie, I was really impressed. And I recognized immediately that Barbie is one of the best movies I've seen in a really long time. What's so great about the Barbie movie? Well, it's a fantastical movie. It takes place in Barbie Land. That just opens up so much opportunity for the creative, the set, the costumes, the storylines, and it's just a lot of fun. The cast is star-studded. I mean, you've got Ryan Gosling and Margot Robbie as the leads, and so many other Barbies. The biggest crossover of all time. You had Bridgerton cast in there, half of the cast of Sex Education. I mean, Will Ferrell, Kate McKinnon, Issa Rae. When you can get together a massive cast of just icons, you know you've got something good. The Barbie storyline is incredibly relevant. If you haven't seen it yet, I won't spoil it. But the movie does a really great job of driving home a true message and what it means to be a woman in today's world. It also really drives home the expectations around gender in general. What's expected as a masculine energy and what's expected as a feminine energy, and the gender roles that we are expected to fall into. There's been a lot of feedback. There's been a lot of dissertations, there's been a lot of analysis. The opinions are endless. But I think at the end of the day, it's a really important message. And the whole movie was done in just such a smart way. It also has a killer soundtrack. I mean, Billie Eilish, Nicki Minaj, Dua Lipa. If that's not enough to convince you to see Barbie, the set designs and the wardrobe was also off the charts. It's the best movie, hands down. Best movie of the year. I know a lot of people agree with me because they just broke like $1 billion at the box office, which is insane. Incredible, incredible movie. And definitely a movie that I would like to own if that's still a thing. Do people still buy DVDs? Or do you just buy like the digital download? I don't know. But I would like to own that movie because I can see myself going back to it, being like, I just need to watch Barbie. Something else that I'm watching right now that I absolutely love is Call Her Daddy, the Call Her Daddy podcast with Alex Cooper. Now, you might be saying, but Ava, it's a podcast. What do you mean you're watching it right now? And this is one of those examples of where the lines of media are getting really, really blurry. So the Call Her Daddy podcast is also like a fully produced talk show. It's something that I watch every week, like a TV show. If you are unfamiliar with Call Her Daddy, the podcast started on Barstool Sports, and it was mostly a sex podcast. It's very raunchy in its origins, but it's really fun. And Alex is just a boss. She's really fun to watch. And what I think's most interesting is how she's really evolved the show. So now she's doing a ton of celebrity interviews. She had John Mayer on recently. I mean, Christina Aguilera, all sorts of people who don't typically do interviews are going on Call Her Daddy. And I think that's a testament to one, the fact that Alex has created a space where people enjoy going and having a real conversation. And two, she's not the old school master manipulator media interviewer. A lot of people came up in the times of being like totally spliced and diced and having your words taken so far out of context that most people that we grew up listening to hate interviews because they know that when they go on to shows, they're going to get totally twisted. Their words are going to be taken out of context. And that's an incredibly frustrating experience. So, what Alex has done with Call Her Daddy is create a safe space. And there have been so many interviews that I've loved watching. Call Her Daddy is great if you love a little millennial bad bitch energy and you want something to watch once a week that's in interview format, but the questions go beyond just the very surface level, like, tell me about your new album. I mean, there's definitely like, tell me what you like in the bedroom. So it keeps things interesting for sure. So if you want to check out the Call Her Daddy podcast, you can watch it or listen to it on Spotify. The next thing on my watch list right now is Chicken Shop Date with Amelia de Moldenberg. And this is what I'd qualify as like a short YouTube series, if you will. The plot is essentially Amelia goes on dates at various chicken shops around London and again interviews artists, celebrities. And this is definitely an example of peak British humor. I mean, it's really funny, it's really awkward, and Amelia just asks the most bizarre questions to her guests in the midst of being on a date eating chicken nuggets. So it's highly entertaining. And these episodes are only like 5 to 10 minutes long. And so this is just a fun thing to watch, whenever there's a new date. I'm like, sign me up. I'm the first one there because I love Chicken Shop Date. If you want to check one out just to like dip your toe in the water, see if you like it, I highly recommend Amelia's Date with Keke Palmer. I don't think I stopped laughing. Like I laughed through the entire date. It was so fucking funny. But yeah, I think it's just I love people doing unique things. Like what obscure idea to take a camera crew into a chicken shop and go on a date with somebody and just sort of deadpan ask them really strange questions, edit it down into a 10-minute YouTube video, and like, boom, you've got a career. And so you can find Chicken Shop Date on YouTube. Okay, the last thing on my must watch list right now is a little more serious. This is a little more educational, but I'm absolutely loving the Diary of a CEO with Stephen Bartlett. So I love my Brits. That's a theme here. We've got Amelia, we've got Stephen, and there's more on the list. It is what it is. I love them. Stephen's show is a really interesting opportunity to view some of the world's biggest business leaders, thought leaders in a totally new setting. This is more educational in the sense that you get to learn a bit more about people's backgrounds. We're talking Richard Branson of Virgin. We're talking Simon Sinek, the author. We're talking Marie Forleo, Sophia Amoruso. Basically, anyone who has any type of business that you may have heard of probably has done a Diary of a CEO interview. And I really just love getting a totally different look, a peek behind the curtain in terms of what these people deal with as business owners, their struggles, their wins, and really just getting an understanding of what motivates them. I think that's the biggest thing. And so these are a little more serious. But again, great. It's a podcast, but I watch it. So again, I watch it on YouTube. And I find that watching these interviews is a bit more interesting than just listening to them. So Stephen interviewed a doctor that I find really interesting, Dr. Daniel Amen. He's a brain health doctor. I love that episode. And then also the ultimate girl boss, the original girl boss, Sophia Amoruso. That was a really interesting interview. He did one with Alex Cooper of Call Her Daddy. All sorts of good stuff to dig into there, but that's really an interesting sort of POV from a CEO's perspective. And I appreciate that. So if that sounds interesting to you, highly recommend. I'm just having a moment where I'm like, am I an iPad kid? Like everything I watch is on YouTube, aside from Barbie. What does that say about me? What does it say about life? I don't know. Moving on to what I'm listening to. When it comes to music, the person I'm loving most right now is Fred Again, another one of my Brits. Represent. Fred Again is an incredible producer, DJ, artist, and I've been totally obsessed with Fred Again we must be coming up on a year. I think I discovered him last summer. He creates what I'd call dance music. What I really love about his art, his sound, is that he creates it very organically. He does a lot of sampling from other artists, but also people, like just people that he has conversations with. And his ability to take a clip of spoken word and spin it into an entire song is really incredible. I think the fact that he is using human sourced material just makes it so relatable and also meaningful. Like when I listen to Fred Again, I feel things. And for an Aquarius, that's saying a lot. I'm absolutely obsessed. He has a 3-album project called Actual Life. So it's Actual Life 1, Actual Life 2, and Actual Life 3. I've been playing those albums on repeat. And I am so incredibly excited because I get to I say finally, I'm going to see him in concert. I'm going to see Fred Again in LA, and I'm so fucking excited because he sells out instantly. By scoring tickets to Fred Again, I literally feel like I won the fucking lottery. But if you're looking for some music that you can really listen to in any situation, if you want to chill, if you want to get pumped up, if you want to meditate, he's got like a little album that has made its way onto like yoga playlists. Fred Again has music for every feeling. Check him out. Fred, I love you. When I say I've been listening to Fred Again for a year straight, I'm not exaggerating. I don't know if you do this, but I get into this mode where I totally binge one artist. I go through phases with music. I had a serious Drake phase. It was like 10 years long, not exaggerating. And then I went into an Ariana Grande phase. And then I had a Miley Cyrus phase. Now I'm in my Fred Again phase. I don't know. I don't know what that's about. But outside of my Fred phase, the other artist that I've started listening to recently that I had never really listened to in the past is Taylor Swift. The thing that's so fascinating about Taylor Swift to me right now is exactly what I'm describing and experiencing now. Like, obviously, I've been aware of who she is as a person, as an artist for a decade, but I was never really like a fan of her music. I think she came out, she was kind of a country artist at first. That's really not my vibe. And then she went into pop. And when Taylor was in pop, I was in my Drake phase. So, like, I was on a different wavelength. But now, going on this massive tour, she's on her Eras tour, and she's touring with an incredible album. So, her current album is called Midnights, and I actually quite enjoy it. I think it's a really great album. But the other thing that's happening is she's really re-releasing all of her other albums. So she's re-recording them and releasing the music in such a way that she gets the ownership credit that she's deserved all along. And the process of re-releasing this music is making it new again. And I think that is so fascinating. So, when I was in my rap era and she was singing 1989, I had no idea. But guess what? The album's going to be re released in the fall. So I just think it's really interesting. And I love what she's doing as a businesswoman. You know what I mean? Like, major respect for Taylor Swift. And as far as I can see from TikTok, one of the greatest concerts of all time. If you've never quite been a Swiftie and don't think you'd be a Swiftie, but like you're open to it, tuning into Taylor Swift is not a bad idea. Now, those are my only music recommendations because, again, I'm heavy in my binge phases. It doesn't leave a lot of time for multiple artists, but that's okay. I'm fully dedicated. When it comes to podcasts, I love podcasts. Half of them are now shows, which is also cool. But I was thinking about when I decide to watch versus when I decide to listen to a podcast. And I think it just kind of comes down to like, what's the video production? You know, if you're hosting a full on talk show and you've got a set and you've got a celebrity in your studio, I'm going to watch it. But if you're literally me right now, talking to this microphone from your bedroom with a ring light in your face, like, might not want to watch that. So, in terms of the podcast that I'm listening to that I'd recommend, first and foremost, we've got Anything Goes with Emma Chamberlain. Now, Emma Chamberlain is the voice of a generation. Emma is the ultimate Gen Z icon, and I fucking love her. She's got a great point of view. She has a very interesting view and take on the world, and she's really tapped in to a lot of things. I find her really interesting to listen to. She talks about anything from what makes someone stylish or fashionable to dealing with anxiety, everything, anything and everything. And Emma Chamberlain is sort of one of my comfort people. She's the person that you put on when you're like, I've had a long day. I just want to like hang out with Emma, and she's there. She does have a video option for her podcast. However, I like to think that we're the same. We're both sitting with a mic and a ring light. There's not a lot to see there, although she does sport some very interesting outfit combinations on occasion. But this is one that I recommend listening to. I actually started following Emma when she was really big into YouTube. I mean, that's how she came up, and I love her videos. For me, the Anything Goes podcast is like a substitute for the fact that she doesn't really create videos very often anymore. If you want to really just tap into what the kids are up to, Emma Chamberlain. So her show's available on Spotify. It's also now back on Apple and other platforms. If you want to watch the video, you have to go to Spotify, but anywhere else you can listen to it. So we love that. Last but not least, the other podcast that I'm loving and I have been loving for a while is Natalia Benson. And she is a spiritual business coach. And I have been a fan of her work for years now. I've been in a few of her programs. Most recently, she's been my business coach. She's really helped see me through the relaunch of my brand, and she's helped me uplevel my business immensely. And every time that I'm not in a position where I'm working with her directly, I'm always like filling in with her podcast. I'm like, I need my dose of Natalia. Like, I need it. And so her podcast is great if you are interested in spiritual business. And she covers everything from finances and investing to how to optimize your calendar and sync it with your menstrual cycle. Recently, she had a really interesting episode on past life regressions, all sorts of really magical and also really practical knowledge. And I love her dearly. And so, if you're somebody that wants to dig into either creating a heart center business or expanding upon your business, Natalia Benson is a great resource. And you can find her podcast on Apple, Spotify, all the big ones. It's audio only, so you can listen to it wherever, whenever. And shout out NB. Love you. So the next category is the reading list. And the fact that I even have a reading list is a major win for me. I've never considered myself the biggest reader, but I find that the further and further away I get from school, like the more years that pass, the more I actually enjoy just reading for fun. And I'm also not a very fast reader. I typically like to read like 5 pages of something before I go to bed. That's how I consume books. But I say all of this to simply say I have 3 recommendations for books. First book that I've read recently that I absolutely adored is the Paris Hilton memoir. I have been a Paris Hilton stan since day one. The Simple Life came out when I was like, I don't know, 11, 12, 13 years old. And The Simple Life was Bible. Like, Paris Hilton was the original influencer. I mean, she pioneered reality TV and influencing and being the media's it girl. And all of it has always seemed so fantastical and also sort of like surface level, right? Like we didn't really know Paris. We knew Paris Hilton, the character. And reading her memoir was absolutely fascinating. I expected one thing and I got something completely different. There are a lot of heavy topics that she deals with in this book. And at times it can be hard to read, but I think it's so incredibly important to listen to her story because what we saw was just a tiny fraction of her lived experience. And it's just a beautiful reminder that everyone has a story. And reading this book, I just felt like I learned a lot about her as a person and as a businesswoman and as a pioneer of influencing. I read this book in like 5 days. That's a big deal. I'd highly encourage you to check out this book if you're open to having a new perspective on Paris Hilton, the person. The next book that I read this year that I really loved was 8 Rules of Love: How to Find It, Keep It, and Let It Go by Jay Shetty. Now, this book is, I'd say, half book and half workbook. This is one of those books that has a lot of exercises in it, and it's a really important moment of reflection. I actually picked up this book because of a conversation that Jay had on the Call Her Daddy podcast. I really loved his perspective on relationships and redefining love in terms of what movies have made it out to be versus what it actually is. He really gets down to the fact that we can't expect one person to be everything for us, which is incredibly true and also fascinating because, the idea of finding like the one, your partner, your soulmate, puts so much pressure on this one person to be every fucking thing that you need, which is completely unrealistic, which is why a lot of love doesn't work out, you know? So this book was really enjoyable. I picked it up at a time where I'm not currently dating, but I found it really applicable to reflecting on my past relationships and also looking at my familial relationships as well with my parents, my sibling, and it's just really insightful. So, this was a great read. Lastly, the book that I'm currently reading right now for 5 pages before bed every night is World Travel: An Irreverent Guide by Anthony Bourdain. If you know me, you know how much I love Anthony Bourdain. Anthony Bourdain is my favorite storyteller of all time. Watching Parts Unknown really opened my eyes to the depth of what travel and exploring the world can be. And Tony had such a unique perspective on the world. And he was also really dark and really sarcastic and really fucking funny. His viewpoint is one that I really value. So, this book is something that was started in 2018 and finished after his death. And it was published in 2021. It's basically a collection of his best insights and recommendations and quotes from all of the places that he traveled for years as part of his TV shows. I just love going through this book. It's really big, it's like 500 pages long, but every night before bed, I've just been reading the little chapter about a new city or a new country. And some of the places, like some of the restaurants, some of the hotels didn't survive. They didn't make it past the pandemic, but that doesn't matter. It's really just about Anthony's experience in those places. And it's such a special book. If you are a fan of his, if you watched any of his shows, if you enjoyed his take on the world half as much as I do, it's just a really nice piece to be able to go back and be like, what did he say about Paris? And there'll be at least 3, 4, 5, 6 quotes that you're like, oh God, that's why I love that man. So if you're a travel fan or a Bourdain fan, you should pick up his World Travel Guide. So that's what I'm watching, listening to, and reading. The last category is who I'm following. This one's tricky because I love so many creators on the internet. There are so many people doing really unique things, sharing their really kooky opinions and views of the world, and I fucking love all of it. But here are just a few of the creators that I'm obsessed with at the moment. Victoria Paris. Victoria Paris is a creator who mostly creates on TikTok, and she's just a girl. She's just a girl sharing her life with the world. But Victoria Paris is probably the most influential influencer that I see on the internet right now. She single-handedly sold out Celsius drink and Olipop. I mean, basically, if there's something that she loves, the Victorians will go fucking sell it out. And that is influence. She's not sponsored by Celsius. She's not sponsored by Olipop or any of the other things that she sometimes sells out on occasion. But damn, her fan base is ride or die. I have become so invested in her life for no reason. The biggest story right now is that Victoria Paris is having a hot girl summer in Europe. And it is a play by play. I mean, first she's in Paris and she asks out a hot man from the elevator on a date, and they go on a date. And then she gets a mullet and then flies to the coast of France, but like actually books her flight for the wrong date, you know? And then she has to rent a car and she's driving on the wrong side of the road. And I am actually really pissed that I'm not having a hot girl summer in Europe. You know, I thought I'd be fine not being there this summer. I was there last summer. Like, I'm good. I'm good. No, I have FOMO. And it's mostly thanks to Victoria Paris. Okay, the next niche follow of mine on TikTok is Jake Shane. Now, Jake Shane has an obscure username. He's Octopus Lover 8. This boy rates and reviews octopus. He goes to restaurants, he orders octopus, and then he rates it. First of all, I'm impressed that like a 20-something-year-old likes octopus. I mean, that's just a little like, you're quirky. But the other thing that he does that's really interesting to me is that he actually does, like, he reenacts real life moments, but he brings them into the now. So all of his followers will go and be like, do this skit, do that skit. They'll submit their ideas. And so, for example, he reenacted sharks during the filming of Shark Week. And he does this little skit video from the perspective of a shark who's tired of performing for the filming of Shark Week. It's really fucking funny. It's so funny. Another example is like England finding out that the 4th of July is a thing. But, you know, he's reenacting it as a conversation where somebody's FaceTiming him and they're not invited to the 4th of July party. You know what I mean? It's really funny stuff. He's an example, again, of a creator that's just doing something really quirky, highly entertaining. Okay, my most recent must follow for you is Bobby Altoff. Now, Bobby Altoff has a podcast called The Really Good Podcast. And she's one of the most sarcastic people I have ever seen. Basically, she gets in character and interviews people in a really shitty way. And what I mean by really shitty way is like she's not really asking them serious questions. Her goal in those interviews is to make them as awkward as possible. She had a very classic viral takeoff. So much to the extent that people thought she was an industry plant. Imagine having a podcast with 4 episodes, and your 5th interview is Drake. Bobby interviewed Drake, and it's probably one of the funniest things I've seen in a long time. The interview takes place in his bed. Like, imagine him sitting on one far edge of the bed and her sitting on the far other edge of the bed. And they've got microphones and they're just talking about awkward things. So that concludes my watch list, my listen list, my follow list, my reading list. These are the things that I'm loving right now. Hopefully, you've discovered something new that you might be interested in digging into. And I'd love to know like what's on your listen list. Tell me what you think I should watch from your listen list. Because again, I'm always looking for new media to consume. Can't get enough. More is more. So send me a DM on Instagram at the More Pod with your media picks, your recommendations. I would love to hear them. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you found it something a little a little fun. I am very tired and hoping that whatever I've shared with you just made sense. But as always, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. I appreciate the time that you spend with the pod every single week. If you enjoyed today's episode, if you enjoyed the show, please leave a 5-star rating and or a review. And that's about it. That's all I've got. So I'll see you next week. Listen to the More Pod every Wednesday as I share the things that make me more me and discover a thing or two to make you more you.